told you we're almost there. Sometimes it takes longer than others. Okay, the live stream has begun on YouTube. Welcome to those of you that are here on YouTube watching a recording after. My name is Jason Watterson, and I'm going to be talking today about donated property perils. What are the risks of receiving donated property? Somebody wants to give me a house, somebody wants to give me a school or charge me $1 for this multi-million-dollar property. It's a good deal, right? It's got to be a great deal. Or is it? Are there any risks that go along with receiving a donated property? And that's what we'll spend our time on, and how we can handle this. These can be great opportunities for your organization, but you've got to go into it with your eyes open. So here's our outline. We're going to talk about these properties, why they happen, where they come from, what the potential problems are. We'll talk about the due diligence that we need to do to ensure that these transactions are above boards and that we're prepared for the potential costs and risks that go along with that. And then we'll talk about some basic risk reduction, loss prevention type topics as it pertains to these types of properties, and really all properties that we're dealing with. All right, so what type of properties could be donated to a city, a town, a district, a county, whatever your organization is? We've seen a lot of these over the years. We've seen schools, large elementary schools, high schools. We've seen theaters, old opera houses that are historical buildings. We've seen homes, factories, barns, ag buildings, even raw land that is just donated to the city for a number of reasons. And you ask, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody take good, valuable property and just turn it over to the city or to whatever organization you're with? Well, sometimes it's to be a good citizen. Hey, this is a valuable piece of property, and I'm at a point in my life, I wish, where I have plenty of money, and if I make a donation here, I can probably get a write-off on my taxes. Or here's this historical building, and I want to ensure that this building is preserved and not just knocked down to make some condos or something like that. And if I donate it to the city or to the county, they will, and maybe we have an agreement there that they'll preserve this building. Maybe it's I just don't have the money to keep up this old historic building. Sometimes it's specifically to benefit the community. It's specifically to benefit a charity. Sometimes people want to have a park named after themselves. So, hey, I've got this piece of property and I'll donate it to the town, but name it after me, or name it after my wife or my kids, or something like that. Sometimes it's that tax write-off. Sometimes it's to get rid of liability. Sometimes they see that the writing on the wall that this place is more expensive to manage or to handle than it's really worth, or it's a derelict property and people are trespassing there and causing problems. And so they just want to get this off of their balance sheet. And so, hey, let's donate it to the town. They'll take it. All right. So when we talk about this, sometimes we talk about dollar properties. There's a transaction that happens, and there's $1 transmitted for sometimes a multi-million-dollar piece of property or multi-$100,000 piece of property. Well, what do that's got to be a good deal, right? Well, maybe not. And really, we can extend this beyond donated to really any property transaction. So here are a few words of advice. Beware of any deals. If somebody comes offering you something that is too good to be true, chances are it may be. Now, there are a lot of these things that work out very well, but go into it with your eyes open, because there have been numerous local government agencies in Utah and around the country who've ended up with a boat anchor around their neck. They've ended up with something that cost them a lot of money, cause them a lot of problems. And so go into it with your eyes open. Beware, and I don't mean to call out UDOT, but we've seen a few of these. Beware of UDOT bearing gifts. If UDOT wants to donate some property to you or donate a road to you, there's probably a reason why that's happening. And so we want to have our eyes open to what that reason may be. And you can ask them straight out and say, why are you getting rid of this? And what are the things that go along with this piece of property? Beware of the church. I put a big C on that church, and in Utah, the big C church is the LDS Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they have a tendency to donate properties to our local government agencies out there. And as we go out and we do risk assessments, we've found a lot of these church donated properties have some problems. The church has an active risk management department, and they go out and they look at properties and say, ooh, this is a bad risk for the church. And the church is very risk averse. And so they will donate these properties to the city, the town, the county, whoever will take it. Sometimes it's a group of citizens that get together and say, hey, we want to have this rodeo arena. And the church it's been on the church grounds for a long time, and they want to get rid of it, but we want to maintain our rodeo and have it go on. And so a group of people get together, and then suddenly they say, ooh, this is pretty risky for us to run. Let's start a special service district. And so we see a number of our special service districts around the state are based around these types of properties. Is it always a bad deal? No, not necessarily. But generally, if organizations like UDOT and the church are getting rid of a piece of property for no money or very little money, there's a reason. Beware of closed door deals. Sometimes a benefactor, a donor will pull the mayor aside and go into a meeting and say, I want to donate this property to you, but you can't say anything to anybody about that. That puts us at risk as well. We want to, like I said, go into these deals with our eyes open, and there are very competent mayors out there that have a lot of experience there, but let's use our team of experts, and maybe we bring in outside experts, and we have non-disclosure agreements and all of those things. But let's go into these deals with our eyes open. And just like anything, buyer beware. Let's look at these deals, every level of the details before we take on the deal. A free property can bankrupt your organization. And so we need to be prepared for that these can have massive costs, massive risks that go along with a piece of property. And sometimes we need to say no to a deal like this. List of different property problems. Anybody out there? So I want to see if the chat box, has anybody out there ever been to Wall Mike's in Trapper Creek, Alaska? This is a great place. Pretty interesting little trading post along the highway out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. They got in a lawsuit. Walmart sued them sued Mike for using the word Wall Mike's as the name of his store, and at the end of the day, Walmart backed out and said, you know what, we kind of like that they're paying a little homage to Walmart, and they let him keep using the name. Anyway, all right. So property problems that we see with different types of real estate. And we'll go through each one of these in a little bit of detail here. First of all, just like, and I'll give the little disclaimer on here. I'm not an attorney and I am not a realtor. I'm not giving you advice on these deals. And this is the point when we start talking real estate issues. Anytime you start transferring real estate, professionals should be involved, so we ensure that we've covered everything that needs to be, whether that's real estate professionals or attorneys, you name the appropriate professional, depending on the type and complexity of the deal that we're working on. Some things that we can run into on these real estate issues are: is there free title, clear title or deed to the property itself? Sometimes we jump into the middle of a family battle. And somebody wants to donate this piece of property that's been in the family for generations, and other members of the family don't want to do that. Put your ear to the ground and find out what you're really getting into, because that could end up ugly. Easements can be a problem as well. We've seen situations where there's an easement through an area, maybe a petroleum pipeline, for example, has a right-of-way through an area, and they say, "Hey, we'll donate this property, and you can put a playground on it, or you can put a park over it. However, it is still our easement. We still have to be able to do maintenance on our pipeline, or some other thing. But in certain parts of the state, this is a pretty common thing, where there will be a utility easement or other type of easement through that property that can really change the value of the property. Other encumbrances, things that may impact your property, like that pipeline. Tenants, there may be current tenants in that property, and we may have to be the landlord that evicts those people for they've been in this house that's now donated to our organization. They've been there a long time, and we've got to boot them out because we want to change this use of this property into a park, or we want to build a new building there, and that puts us in a difficult situation. Site issues. We want to look at our property, the physical site, the physical characteristics of that site. Is it a flood zone? Look at it. It's pretty easy to go online and pull up those flood zone maps. Are there known groundwater issues in this area? If it's going to flood, it may not be worth much, and it might be more of a liability to us. Look at seismic issues. Is it located in an area is it built over a fault, or is it a traditional seismic issue in the area? Geotechnical stuff like landslides and sinkholes. As some of us here all know all too well, landslides and sinkholes and all of that can cost a lot of money, and they can really impair the value of that property. What are the surrounding uses of the property? So this may be a great piece of property, but there's a dry cleaner next door, and they've been in business for a long time. Well, that might indicate that there's some environmental issues, not only with the dry cleaning property, but our property as well. If that material that was used there happened to get dumped or end up in the groundwater of our property that we're dealing with. If there was once a gas station on this property, or a slaughterhouse, or who knows what might have been there in the past, that might impact the value of that property, and might end up making me have to do a big cleanup that's hyper expensive. All right, building issues. So if I'm buying a piece of property that has a building on it, sometimes there are structural issues. Going back a long time, we had a situation where an old barn was donated to one of our members, and it was not in great repair. One of the people in the organization said, "Hey, can I go salvage a little bit of barn wood out of that for crafts or whatever they were using it for?" And the barn collapsed on this person. So structural issues can cause real safety issues and liability issues. Along with that, is there water damage, mold? Is it at risk for fire? Where is it located? Where it may be a problem for fires. And ADA accessibility is another big thing. Why does a school district donate an old school to the city or to another organization, whatever your organization is? They want to get rid of that because it doesn't meet code anymore, and it's going to cost a ton of money to get that up to accessibility codes. You may have to put elevators And the problem is we change ownership like that, and we make a modification, substantial modification, all those ADA rules apply. And so we have to put a ton of money into a building to get it accessible. So one of the major questions we have to ask ourselves on this is, what is our intended use in the long run, and what's our timeline to get there? Can we get this property? And we may have to sit on it for a few years before we have the money budgeted to get it to the ultimate intended use where we're at. What's going to happen during that interim, and how much is it going to cost us to maintain that property, and is it a risk to our organization then? Historical issues. Many of you out there may have received a piece of property donated that is a historical building. I've walked through some beautiful, neat, and sometimes terrifying old buildings around the state. And there are definitely things that we look at and say, wow, there's really historical significance to this building, but it's a fire trap, but it's falling down, but it's, you name it. And so let's look at those individual site characteristics and say, what is it going to cost us to maintain, to restore this building? Archeological sites, if there's a Native American burial ground on that site, it's something that can really impact what we can do with the property. What was it used for in the past? Like we said, was it a dry cleaner? Was it a gas station? Does it have any current restrictions to it, like Superfund? You say, and RCRA, what are those things? Well, those are environmental regulations. RCRA is the hazardous waste regulations that says you can't just take hazardous waste and dump it anywhere. Well, the problem is the RCRA didn't come about until the 70s. The EPA wasn't created until the early 70s. And at that time, they developed what they called the Superfund. It was a little bit later. And these were for really contaminated sites. If it's a Superfund site, don't touch it with a 10-foot pole unless you really have millions and millions of dollars in the bank, because there's a reason why Superfund designation is given to these properties, because it is a Superfund that is needed to clean those up. Okay. And just on those environmental issues, there's natural environmental issues. Some areas have naturally occurring radon because of the geologic strata that's there. If you put a basement in a building there, you're going to have radon issues, and it's going to cost money in your construction as well as in your maintenance and ventilation systems to deal with the problem of radon. Other things in existing buildings are these human-caused issues: asbestos, lead paint, lust. Does anybody know what lust is? Well, lust, it stands for leaking underground storage tanks. In that last picture I showed, I had a picture here of this tank that was being dug up prior to EPA coming around. Everybody had, not everybody, but farms, businesses, lots of properties had underground storage tanks that they would put petroleum, either gasoline or diesel fuel oil to heat the building. And they put it in a tank underground because it's safer to put flammable materials underground. Problem was many of these tanks rusted out, and they leaked, and they impacted the soil and the groundwater in the area. And it's really expensive to clean those things up. So LUST stands for leaking underground storage tanks. If you're walking around your property and you see some pipes sticking up that have maybe been cut off, or they're pipes that go into the building, those could definitely indicate that, wow, we've got a problem here. Dumping sites. Now you may think, well, this is just people have been out dumping their old mattress or couch out there, but a dumping site is a dumping site, and there could be some major cleanup costs that go into cleaning a place like that up. If there's been hazardous materials dumped, it's a big deal. And last but not least, safety and liability risks. Is this a place that is frequented by trespassers, by vandals? They're going out there and they're, messing around in the building. They're tagging it with graffiti. Are there unsafe conditions to this building? That structurally it could tip over and crush somebody. Are there attractive nuisances that could hurt somebody? That as soon as you sign on the dotted line that I own this, you have liability for those attractive nuisances, and you've got to do something about it. What exists on the property? Are there wells? You remember back into the, when was that? 80s, 90s, when the little girl fell down an open well, and they spent days and days trying to safely get her out. And so you think about those things. Old ponds that could be a liability, sweaty dynamite that has been stored out there, and we laugh about that, but it's happened. Physical characteristics, there are cliffs, there are waterfalls, there are, who knows, portals to another dimension. Some of our members out there own tunnels that go underground that are a real draw to teenagers and people out to have an adventure. And we bring liability and challenges to ourselves by owning those types of properties. And we also bring costs of managing those things. All right, so now we know what the risks are. What do we have to do? What is our due diligence that is required to ensure that we have a good property transaction that is not going to get us into a lot of trouble and is not going to cost us a fortune for a free piece of property? We need to take reasonable steps. Okay, that's, if you look up the definition of due diligence, it talks about reasonable steps. What is it? What is reasonable to do in a property transaction? And reasonable steps means we need to research. We need to look into this closely and not just sign on the dotted line. We may have to engage experts. And you know what experts mean? Experts mean they're expensive. Experts mean they cost a lot of money to have them come out and sign on a report that says, yeah, everything's good about this place, or don't touch this place with a 10-foot pole. Sometimes we may do an official assessment, and I would recommend in many of our transactions at least doing a phase 1 environmental site assessment. And you say, well, what is that? Phase 1 site assessment is basically you engage with somebody that knows what they're talking about, somebody that's done this. Normally they're a consulting company. You may have somebody in your organization that can do this kind of thing as well. But they do a records review. They look at what is the historical use of this property. Look at insurance maps in 100 years ago and about thereafter. Insurance companies did a great job looking at property insurance on the types and uses of properties. And so you can go back and do a search of those maps and the historical uses of that property and get an idea of what's happened there in the past. Do a site tour and look for those things where the pipes are sticking up. If there's stained soil out there, like there's been oil dumped there, or there's a puddle out there and you can see a rainbow on the water. Well, that's an indicator that there's something more here. We want to do interviews with the owners and the occupants, the people that are there, as to what those uses have been. Specific questions about, has this been a dumping site in the past? What are the problems with this building? Interviews with local officials. You may be the local officials, but you may not. There may be somebody else that's had dealings with this property in the past. Your local building official may have had an interaction with that, and who knows, the property may be condemned, and so that could have an impact as well. They will prepare a report for you, and it's going to cost you some money. And that report will indicate whether a phase 2 site assessment needs to be done. And this is really focusing around environmental issues that, for an official phase 1 and phase 2, this is an environmental report, but we can do the same thing for safety and liability risks or any of these other issues. It may be that we bring in a structural engineer to deter, if there's a question about the structural integrity of the building, we may need to bring in an engineer to give us an idea of, is it safe? Can it be made safe if it isn't? And what that would mean for us as far as cost. So if phase one indicates that you need to do a phase two, you do that. That might include sampling and drilling wells, and it may include a remediation plan to clean this place up. And this just might scare you to death. And you say, holy cow, this is really expensive. This is a heck of a lot cheaper than diving into a property that's impaired. I got a phone call one day working for a company, and I got a call from a corporate vice president, and he says, "Hey, we just bought a foundry. Do you want to go take a look at it?" I was like, no, you got this backwards. I'm supposed to take a look, and then you buy it if it's okay. We had signed on the line, and we bought one of the dirtiest industries in history in a foundry, and we bought it. We owned everything that went along with it. So do these things ahead of time. Do your due diligence before you sign on that dotted line. Sometimes you have to say no, even if it's something that, wow, this is great. This person is offering a property that on the surface looks great, but we've got to be willing to say, no, this doesn't meet with what we're with the budget that we have, with the current situation of our organization, and sometimes we have to say no. So, and I just wanted to bring this up right now, because it may not be a property that you don't own now. It may be one that you already own, that as we talk about this, you're thinking, oh, we got that place. What about that? Think about those as well, not just donated properties, but what do we have and what risks do each of those bring to us? So as we look at reducing our property risks, there's some steps here that I think can help. Number one, I want to budget controls into the cost of the property. Yeah, they're going to sell this. They're going to sell this old house to me for $1, but the old house is full of asbestos, and it has this problem and that problem. It's going to cost what to do that? And don't just spitball that. Ask an expert, especially if you start talking asbestos. That can be extremely expensive. Remember the broken window theory. What was that? Well, this was a theory that was put out there, and a lot really bought into that. And the theory goes something like they took a car, just an average car, and parked it along the side of the road and left it there for a couple of weeks. And nothing happened to the car. Everything was fine. Nobody messed with it or anything like that. It wasn't in a no parking zone. And then they went out to the same car and they broke a window out. And then they left the car again. Well, guess what happened? Pretty quick, another window was broken out. And then the tires were all stolen. And then the car was really broken up. The theory is that if I have a property that looks like it's derelict, it looks like it's been vandalized, probably more vandalism will take place. Probably more people will do things to that property. So part of the cost of doing business on a property like that is to keep that property looking like someplace that is well kept, and people aren't going to want to go in and trash that place. We want to look at the hazards and eliminate those hazards, and that's going to cost some money as well. If it's not possible to eliminate those hazards, I've got to guard those. And that may mean I need to put fencing around this property. Hey, we've got problems with trespassers coming in here. I've got to secure the property, and I've got a budget to, maybe if the police department's in your town, I got to send more patrols out there, or I've got to talk with the police agency that's over that and say, we're going to be buying this property, and we've got to take care of the problem of trespassers and vandals out there. Will you partner with us for that? We want to keep people away from that property unless it's specifically designed to have people come in to that property. And that may be a problem because the traditional use of the property was everybody used it. It was kind of common property. And we need to do regular property inspections to see what has happened. If somebody's damaged that, if they've stolen stuff, and we want to get out there and document those inspections so we can show that we've been reasonable and prudent, that we've done our due diligence. All right. So in summary, don't get surprised with these. It may look like a great deal. It may look like a great deal on the surface, but don't get surprised. Go into it with your eyes wide open, and you may have to spend some money to find out what the problems are with the property. Take all of the costs into account, and those can be tremendous. Do your due diligence. And then once we own the properties, even if we're not going to do anything, our ultimate intended use for that for several years, because we don't have the money to do it, we've got to manage it. We've got to go out there and keep it clean, keep it maintained, keep people out who aren't supposed to be there, and that's really the steps that we need to take. I hope that this has been a beneficial presentation, or at least spurred a little bit of thought on your parts there. If you have questions or comments, please go ahead and type those into the chat box, and I'd be happy to take a stab at those now. Doug and Brent, any questions or thoughts from your end?
Haven't seen any questions come in yet. Great job.
All right.
Yeah, there was a lot to think about there, Jason. Thank you. I did have a thought while you're going through there, just kind of maybe a related subject, not exactly the same. Sometimes we're the donor. Sometimes we allow others to use our property for free or for little cost. And sometimes, that can result in abuse to that property. It can result in the property maybe getting into a hazardous condition, but hey, we're letting somebody else use it. But if we don't take steps to make sure that they're maintaining it, we're not inspecting it to make sure it's still safe for use, we could still wind up on the hook, for a liability claim that comes up in association with that property. Sometimes it's even vehicles or equipment where we make our equipment available to another entity, to a service district or something, but it's titled to us, and they go and have an accident in that vehicle, and we're again, on the hook because we own the vehicle. So that's just another kind of twist on thinking about donated property is when we let others use our property for free or for nothing without safeguards and controls in place, we can really be putting ourselves out there also.
Yeah, good point, Doug. And just to take that a step further, looking at, here's an example. Maybe we have a nonprofit in our community. And I mean, it could be Alcoholics Anonymous, it could be the Boy Scouts, it could be, some organization like that. And we've got this building that it was donated to us. It's an old school, and we've got lots of rooms in there. They want to come in and have their troop meetings there. Or they want to come in and have AA meetings or whatever this organization is. And it makes a lot of sense to help that group out. But you may not be helping yourself out by just saying, yeah, come on in and use that. If we have groups that are coming in and using our facilities, particularly if they're doing things that are more hazardous, we should have an indemnification agreement there and get them to name us or to provide us with a certificate of insurance, naming us as an additional insured. And yeah, definitely something that we should be doing, because otherwise, and you say, oh, but they're a nonprofit. Well, guess what? Nonprofits have liability policies as well. And if they don't, they should. And I don't say that just because I'm working for the insurance, the trust. It's in today's world, we need to have that protection out there. We need to have that backing, and they, it's easy to get that coverage for them and just say, we got to have this, and we got to have that certificate of insurance. And in the long run, you're really helping them out to protect themselves as well. All right. Well, I don't see any questions on the chat box. Folks, I really appreciate your time and your attention there. If you do have questions, feel free to contact Doug or Brent or myself, and we'd be happy to take a stab at those things. Use your professionals as well. They can definitely save you a lot of pain and suffering if you just listen to what they have to tell you and go into it with your eyes open. All right, folks, thank you very much. Have a safe day, and please give us a call if you have any questions. And remember that Leadership Summit on Thursday. Sign up for that right now. All right, be safe out there.